thanks for joining us today. This is the Kuali Research Webinar on how to streamline your research protocols management. Before we begin today, starting out with a little poll. So let's see if we can get some information that might help guide what our presenter will be presenting in just another minute so that she can be sure to include information in the appropriate context. So let's see if we can do that now. Great. So how many of you have protocols in your institution that are numbering less than 50 in total annually? Or for those that are 50 to 200? Are there other people who have 200 to 500, 501 to 1,000, or more than 1,000 in a fiscal year? And I'll give you all a chance to put in your responses, so we'll wait just a couple of minutes. Okay, so let's see. Looks like we have a pretty neck-and-neck competition between the 50 to 200 and 200 to 500, with the remaining people in the more than 1,000 range, which must be very busy. Okay, and then we were also wondering if you could let us know how often your committees meet. So we know that committees tend to have a particular cadence, so do your committees meet weekly, monthly, quarterly, or on an ad hoc as needed sort of basis? I'll give everyone a chance to respond now. One of the nice things about doing these polls in our webinar is it also gives you a sense for what is happening across the community as well. It's giving us that sense. Okay, and again, 2/3 of the people voted that are on the call, and it looks like there's really a significant focus on meeting monthly here for your committee. So that will help our presenter guide the presentation today towards the monthly committee meetings. So with no further delay, I did want to introduce our presenter for today. And our presenter is Jen Flock. She is currently the Kuali Research Compliance Product Manager, and that she has been with us in Kuali Research and the prior MIT COIS Foundation community for nearly 10 years. She's done all sorts of everything in the community with us. So she's been a QA manager, a business analyst, a functional consultant, and now she is our compliance-specific product manager. So we are really fortunate to have Jen with us. She comes from an extensive governmental background, being with NIH for over 15 years, 10 of which of those years were with NCI, helping out in as a research program specialist in the Division of Cancer Prevention's Protocol Information Office. So she has a lot of context management information, and she's been in your shoes before. So with that in mind, she has a good sense of what protocols can bring to us, and we're pleased to present you with how to streamline your research protocols management using Kuali Research Protocols, which was recently launched in this year in 2017. So without further ado, Jen, take it away.
Thanks, Susan, and thanks all of you for joining us today. One of the things I want to mention as we go through this presentation, what I'm presenting is a system that was really developed over a couple of years now. We released it in March of this past year, and a number of different schools have provided input into the design and user testing. So it really has been a joint effort from our protocols user group in the community. So I just wanted to put a big shout out to the community and noted some of the folks here. What I'm going to cover today is really an overview of protocols. Some of the key points that I will touch on is that with this system, you will have the ability to manage both human and animal protocols within the same portal. So instead of having to go to one module for IRB work and another for IACUC work, they'll all be within the same system. That said, you don't have to implement both, again, depending upon what you need at your institution. it's also possible to implement one but not the other in terms of the types of protocols. The next point, and I will show a demonstration of what our protocol template looks like, but we have what we call a form designer, which will allow you to configure your protocol forms in a way that meets all of your regulatory and institutional requirements, and it includes a number of different question types, presents the questions to the researcher in the different sections based on branching logic, which enables you to create your templates in a way that walk the investigator through filling out the protocol. So if you're an investigator, you won't be presented with different questions and have to figure out if they're applicable to the type of research you're doing. The form should be set up in a way that it walks you through that. So it reduces the amount of data entry, and I'll be giving an example of how that works. The next thing that this system provides that I will highlight is review commenting. So the way that review commenting works within the system is very refined in that commenting can be done at a specific field level. So instead of just having to provide a bunch of overall comments that are given to the researcher after review that they would then need to address, it's a lot more targeted and really helps with looking at what needs to be changed and then also tracking the changes that are made. So with that, what I'm going to do is go through a few high-level scenarios. And those are that the investigator is going to create, prepare, and submit a protocol for review. Then an administrator will process the review, the protocol for review, and prepare a meeting. We'll also go through the reviewer reviewing the protocol and also an investigator revising the protocol. So we'll go over that flow, and then if there's time, perhaps there are a couple of other things I could touch on, but we, as Susan mentioned, we'll have questions at the end. So be thinking about your questions as we go along, and then we'll try and address as many as we can when we get to the end, and any that we can't attend or attend to at the webinar, we will follow up with you by email after the webinar. So that brings us to the point where I'll do the demo. So first what I want to do is just give you an overview of what protocols looks like. So this is the Manage Protocols screen. Currently I'm logged in as a person who is both an IRB and IACUC administrator. So I'm seeing all of the menu items that would be available to somebody with that role. So a few things that I want to point out. The Manage Protocols screen is available to other folks in the organization who may need to either edit, submit, or view protocols. So I wanted to start with this screen so you can get an idea of, it's one of the screens that's available to all of the different user types potentially. So if I hide this menu here and go through some of the things that are available, a few things to note. Currently I have this set up in a way that I don't have any filters saved. So I'm showing all of the protocols that I'm able to view based on my privileges and also the organization unit that I belong to. So you can also set viewing based on where somebody is in an organizational unit. For example, if somebody's in a particular department, maybe there's an administrator there that should only see protocols within their department. That's something you could configure. So these are all of the protocols available to me because I'm the IRB and IACUC administrator. I see a number of them. Some of the things I can do to manage my work and organize what I'm going to do right now in my management process is I can hide and show some of these columns and say, okay, for what I'm looking at right now, I want to organize my protocols by type. And so you can see here, I have both IRB and IACUC protocols. For this demo, I do have, I'm primarily going to go through an IRB flow, but I won't be doing anything that's terribly specific to IRB. Most of the flows and the actions I take will be relevant to IACUC as well. Just in the interest of time, it's easier to demo from one protocol type versus another. So I could see all of the protocol types here. Some of the other things, you can see the various statuses that we have available. I can easily see the PI, and then I can filter things. So if I wanted to say, I've already saved these filters, each user can save their own filters. If I want to see only IRB protocols, I could do that, and it'll filter out the ones that are IACUC, so I could focus on those. And then from there, as this user, I could go in. I could also sort in different ways if I want to do that. So I have a number of different avenues by which I can organize my work. And this is a standard in all of our new modules to have this kind of capability. So with that, I'm now going to show a couple of other things that are specific to the IRB or IACUC admin, and then I'm going to flip over and go through the investigator flow to create a new protocol. So also as the administrator, I have a few other menu items that you'll see here. Protocols assigned to me, that's when I'm assigned a protocol as a particular reviewer. I'll get into that in a little more detail when I get into the review process. Meetings and agendas, I have this tab here, and I can go in, and this is where I can create meetings, prepare agendas, and do minutes, and we'll get into that later as well. Committees I won't get into in detail likely in this demonstration, but I do want to note that for a given institution, you can have any number of committees, and then within those committees, you can track all of the members and the schedules. One of the things that we discussed today was that it sounds like a lot of people have a monthly schedule, so we do have a quick way that you can set up relative dates, so say every Friday, or have a monthly meeting. So there are some of those options here. And then I'm just going to cancel out of that. Protocol templates, I'm not going to talk to configuring the templates themselves, but this is where you'll be able to create the forms that you'll then use for your protocol. We'll probably do another demo that's specific to form designing next year, but I won't get into that in detail. The two other things that I want to note before I get into some of the specific scenarios to give you the overview of what we offer in the system are our configuration screens. This is where you have the ability to set specific permissions, and then also we have notifications that you can configure as well. So notifications are email notifications that you can send out with respect to certain actions that are taken, and then correspondence templates, those are more of formal letters that are associated with some actions. And there's similar ones for IACUC as well. So with that, I'm now going to go into one last screen here for the administrator. This is the dashboard for the administrator. One of the things to note here, again, is that they can come into their dashboard and see both IRB and IACUC activity. So if I am, for example, someone who maybe this week I'm not worried about IACUC for whatever reason, I can hide these widgets, or I can bring them back as needed. And this is again from my own user's point of view. The feedback we got from our user group and user testers, they helped drive what data we provided here, and we're continuing to build off of it. So what this does is it helps the administrator understand exactly what's in their queue at a given time. So you can see here I have two new protocols, one that was returned by the researcher, so that there was a protocol that was sent back for revisions and is now back with the IRB. I can also see what's going on with the PI, how many have been sent back to the researcher, if any of those revisions if I have any revisions required that are overdue, and similar with the reviewer. So I can see that there's 2 protocols assigned to a reviewer and 1 is overdue. And then also along with that, I can go in and click on one of these items and it will default the list to those items that were in the count. So I can see in this case, oh, these are the new protocols that came in and were submitted for review. So with that, what I'm going to do is actually go in and show you how to create a protocol as an investigator. So bear with me. I am now logging in as someone who is an investigator. Previously, I was in as a admin. So now I'm here as Allison Kate, who is an investigator. She has a number of protocols in different stages. You can see she already has one in progress. I could go in as her. Also, I can hide this menu on the left to give me a little bit more room. I could work on this protocol that I haven't yet submitted, but I'm actually going to go ahead and create a new one. So I'll go back here and create a new protocol and walk you through that process. So in this scenario, Allison Kate has the ability to create an IRB protocol, but not an IACUC protocol. That's based on a configuration that's set in the system. And that's just here to show you how you can configure things to enable different users to have specific privileges to create a protocol, either both IRB and IACUC protocols, or one or the other, or neither, depending upon what's appropriate. So in this case, I'm going to go in and I'm going to select myself as the principal investigator. Typically, the principal investigator may not be the individual creating the protocol. Often it's an assistant or a coordinator. So in this case, it's the principal investigator. When I selected that person and then their unit, these data are coming from reference data that are set up and are made available to protocols. So what I mean by that, the people that are available to be selected as principal investigators, these are active users that can be set as a principal investigator. So this could be pulling in from another source of data at your institution, for example, your human resources feed. Lead university, if you have an organizational hierarchy, that's something you can either set up within Kuali, and we have a way to do 2 different ways that you can go about doing that, or it can be pulled in from another data source as well. Now I'm going to call this webinar demo protocol. Nothing terribly fancy. And then once I've added these 3 pieces of information, my protocol is saved. So you can see it has a protocol number, and I'm taken to the next set of questions. So the way the system is set up, it takes 3 key pieces of information to create a protocol, and then at that point, potentially another individual could pick up on filling out the rest of the protocol, or if the user gets sidetracked, has to do something else, they can leave the system and come back. So here is my what we call general questionnaire. That's where we've configured it in this demo instance. So this is where I can enter some very key information that will then drive the rest of the protocol sections that I'll need to fill out. So in this case, if I say there's drug or device involved, there's vulnerable populations, and I'll say it's minimal risk. So for each of these answers based on this, and they don't always have to be radio buttons, we just did that in this example. After I answer these questions and I click next, then I'm presented with the full protocol. So you can see here the data that I've already entered, principal investigator, lead unit, those key pieces of information. The general questionnaire is also included down here. I can change some of these answers that I have added before. I can continue to edit those. Also, I'm presented with different sections that are available for me to fill out or that I have to fill out. And this is based on how we've set things up in the form designer. So in this case, I've already added my principal investigator. I'm going to go ahead and add another person. So for example, I could do a person who is maybe a co-investigator, and I want to give them full access. So you can also give permissions on a protocol by protocol basis. So in this case, I gave my co-investigator full access, or I could give them read only, or they don't have to be given access at all. We could just be recording them. And I'm going to say they're a department contact. I could also add attachments for individual people as well. And again, these are based on configuration. So with that, I'm going to save my other person. I also can add attachments. The attachment types that you determine, these are configurable. And in this case, I'm going to go in and grab a document. You can see I can drag and drop. I can also add attachments by doing a lookup in my file system. I'm just going to say this is the consent form, and it is consent material. I could include a comment. In this case, that's not necessary, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I can add another attachment as well. And again, I can just drag and drop. And then I could say this is an advertisement. So you can see I've added a couple of attachments. One of the features within the system is there is the ability to view certain types of attachments within the screen. So you can see here I have a PDF document, and I can bring that up and actually view it without having to download it. I can also download it as well. And we can do that for PDF documents and image files. So the next thing I'm going to do is I've gone through my general questionnaire, so I'm going to go down to these sections that were driven based on my answers to the general questionnaire. So in this case, I have a start date, so you can see how we have date fields. We have number fields that are available within our form builder, and then check boxes, so you can check more than one. Vulnerable population, the only reason this question is showing up because I had selected vulnerable populations earlier. Another example of that branching logic is in drugs and devices. So here, because I chose in the general questionnaire that I'd be using a drug or device, I have to answer this section as well. If I say it's an IND, then if I say yes, I also have to provide this information here. And if I go to submit, it'll tell me I cannot yet because I have a missing field. So I will go ahead and add that. The other thing you may have noticed from time to time, there's a little message that comes up that says save complete. As I'm filling out this information, the protocol is actually being saved on an ongoing basis. So this prevents individuals from losing their work if they have to do other work, or if they need to, or if they suddenly lose internet. So the next thing I'm going to do is submit my protocol. So now that my protocol is submitted, as the investigator, it becomes read-only. If I go back in my list, I can see that it's submitted for review. And at this point, I'm actually going to log out and log back in as my admin and show you what happens when they pick up on this process. Okay, so again, I'm logged in as someone who's an IRB and IACOOK admin. I may go to my dashboard and see what my new protocols are. Here's the one that has just been submitted. So as the admin, these are the actions that I have available to me. I have a number of actions I can take on the protocol itself, and then I also have all of these comment fields. So this is where I can go in and on a field-by-field level say, please clarify. Keep my typing quick. This is where you can add specific comments to specific sections. So instead of having, in addition to having a general comment, I can still include a general comment. Great. Protocol. I can also add field level comments. Also, as the admin, I can determine who can see, if the researcher can see these comments. Other reviewers and admins can see comments, but only if you check the box that it's visible to a researcher will protocol researchers be able to view the comments, and they'll be able to see those comments when the protocol has been sent back to them, not while it's still submitted to the IRB or IACUC. So I've added a couple of comments here, and then at this point what I could do is I could go ahead and add or edit my review assignments, or perhaps I want to say, oh, I want to send this protocol back to get some comments addressed before it goes to the committee for review. So I'm actually going to go ahead and do that and do a return to researcher. And I will come back to that later as the investigator, but I do want to show that one of the things that just happened is anytime a protocol is returned from the admin side to the reporter side, it will create a new version. So when the investigator goes back in and picks up on this version of the protocol, they won't be overwriting their previous version. We'll still have that history and we'll be able to compare changes. So with that, I'm actually now going to go in to some of my protocols in the interest of time and show you how I've already set some of these up for review. So one I've set up for review is this holiday shopping protocol. So before I started the demo, I processed this protocol to a certain extent. I had indicated the full board review type. I assigned it to a committee and a meeting. I don't have a primary admin reviewer. The admin reviewer, some schools are very interested in this, particularly for those of you who have particular associates who are assigned to an individual protocol to make sure it goes through all of its review processing. Other schools don't need to track that, but that's what that is for. There's a review deadline for the assigned reviewers. And I went in and I had already assigned some reviewers. So I've got a primary and a secondary reviewer. And since I've assigned that, I can see that one of my reviewers has completed their review and then another is still assigned. So based on that, one of the things I can do now is look and see that since Mitzi Pond has completed their review, and we also have a checklist functionality for a review. I won't get into that in detail, but I will show you how that works. So what happened was this reviewer had gone in, completed their review, and as part of that process, they went through a checklist and answered specific questions that had been configured in a form. So in this case, Mitzi Pond has completed her checklist, and as the admin, I can review and see what her answers are to the checklist, and I can see that Althea Bird has not yet submitted her checklist. Also along with that, we have a detailed activity log that we're tracking for the protocol. So you can see this protocol was submitted earlier today. And then one of the things that's also tracked in the history here are notifications that are sent. So we had configured an email notification that went to the admin when this protocol was submitted, and that's also recorded within the activity log. The way that works is that only the recipients will see the notifications in their activity log. So we're not exposing notifications that someone wouldn't otherwise see in the activity log. Also, some of the things with regard to the review assignments, we we'll keep some of that information a little a higher level, so that folks will not be able to see who the reviewers were that were assigned. We wouldn't want the researchers to see that, for example. So that's the activity log and the checklist. And then there are a number of other things I could do at this point, but what I'm going to do is look at some of these comments. So I can see here that Mitsu Pond had provided a comment saying a more specific title that would be preferred. So I can make her comment visible to the researcher by clicking here. Only the admin can make these comments visible, so they have an opportunity for all the comments that come in from the different reviewers to determine which they need to send back, and then also which, if they want to send their own comments or additional comments, they can do that as well. So I'm going to save that. And that's a brief overview of how that review process would work. And then I could also go ahead and add some other comments of my own. For example, I could make a comment about the sample size, or do any number of comments. Again, in the interest of time, I'm actually now going to go over and show you the meeting. Then I'm going to show you a little bit about the reviewer, and then circle back to the investigator at the end. So now I'm going to go in, I'm going to look at my meetings. I have a whole bunch of meetings. I can filter my meetings in a similar fashion as my protocols. In this case, I have my next meeting coming up is December 18th. I've already published this meeting. That means I've set up my agenda and made it available to my committee. So you can see here that I have added the holiday shopping protocol to this agenda, and then there's also another protocol that's available for information only, and that's because this is perhaps an expedited or exempt study, so it's not going to be reviewed at the meeting, but you want to inform your committee about it. Also, I've added a number of agenda items in advance, so you wouldn't need to watch me type a bunch of things, but what I did here is add a section for new business. I added one item as SOP reviews, so you can see that I can add attachments to my agenda as well, and then there's some others. I could also say, happy birthday to one of our members as another item, and save that. Because I've already published the meeting, this is visible to the committee members. And I can also generate an agenda summary and print that. So that gives you an overview of some of the meeting information that you can set up. And then I continue to edit the agenda. Those edits I'll be shared with the committee members up to the time of the meeting. So with that, what I'm going to do is now sign out and sign back in, this time as a reviewer. I want to give you a little bit of a view of what the different users see. So in this case, I've logged in as a reviewer who actually doesn't have any of their own protocols to look at, or protocols of another investigator. But I do have the protocols that are assigned to me. So these are the ones that have been assigned to me for review. And then also I can go in and see my read-only view of the agenda. So I can see what's coming up. I can look at all those protocols, and then I could also view any of the attachments and see what to expect from the upcoming meeting. In this case, I'm going to go in and look at the protocols assigned to me. So in this case, I have the holiday shopping protocol that I had showed before. I have my checklist. And as the reviewer, I want to show you, in addition to the commenting function for the reviewer, which is very similar to what you saw on the admin side, I also have my review checklist that I can fill out. So I can go in and say, yes, the research is adequately described. No, there's a problem with this sample size, or yes. You can also create branching. We kept this a very minimal template, but you could create branching within this form. Again, this is configurable, as well as like similar to how the protocol is. It looks like I have one more section. I will go down to that. And then in this case, are the qualifications for personnel adequate? That's an example of, because it's no, then I should explain. So that's just an example. And then with that, I could either save this and come back to it or mark it complete. When I mark it complete, it'll be shown as complete for the administrator. So previously, when I had showed this protocol from the administrator point of view, I only saw one of the reviewers had completed their checklist. Now that if I go back as the admin, I'd see that both had. And then I can also comment on the protocol. And with that, I could just submit my review. And in the interest of time, I'm just going to go ahead and do that. So that gives you a brief overview of what the reviewer would see. And the last thing I'm going to do is actually go back as the investigator. So the investigator that we initially started with, as you may remember, one of the protocols we considered not ready for review, so the admin sent it back as returned, and that was the webinar demo protocol. So what I want to show you here is, as the investigator, I can see the comment that was sent back. It says, please clarify, and I could just say, on streamlining protocols, and edit my title and apply that change. And then, let's see, I could also, even though I wasn't asked to address anything else, I can do that. So if based on one change, I realize, oh, I should change something else, maybe I should say, okay, I actually am not going to use children in this case, and I change that. I'm able to do so, and then I can show latest changes. So this is where, as the investigator, I can check my changes before I resubmit them, and then after they're resubmitted, the admin and the reviewer will be able to see these as well. So you can see here, I've added additional information. Down here, I removed one of the previous values that I had selected. So that's how I can address the comments that came back to me from the admin. And again, I have an activity log as well. There's a little less information because some of it's not available to me because I wasn't one of the email recipients when this was submitted, but that is available to me as the investigator. Also, I have other options. I could abandon a protocol if I decide that for some reason I don't want to pursue it. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and resubmit it. So now it's been resubmitted and it can go through the review process again. So that is one thing that I wanted to show you. The other things that are available, once I have an approved protocol, and I'm just going to wrap it up by going back in as the admin, just give you an idea of some of the other things that can occur over in the protocol lifecycle. So some of the other things that become available when you have a protocol that's been approved, for instance, you can go in and you can see here we have the ability to amend and renew protocols. So I could go in, for example, and when I have an approved protocol, I can do an amendment, I can do a renewal. Some of these other options I have available to me, again, because I have now logged in as an admin again. But if I wanted to go ahead and amend my protocol, I can do that. And then when I do that, I just want to give you a little bit of overview of the post-approval process. I could say need to make changes. Continue. And again, with the amend process, I can also make edits, testing a lot of things. I'll just do my go-to. Apply changes and then show changes. So the track changes and the versioning comes into play with the amendment process as well. So we do have a full life cycle. There's also a renewal process in which we can show a renewal form, and then some of the other things that we're actually working on development is the ability to create and submit reportable events. That'll be coming soon, so it's another thing to look forward to next year. But with that, I want to make sure that we have enough time to do some more polls and answer some questions. So with that, I think I will be handing it over to Susan.
Thank you, Jen. I love to watch your webinars because it's just so clean and streamlined and pretty. All right, let's jump into the polls. So this will give everyone an opportunity to add questions. So if you've thought of something along the way and you didn't have a chance to add it yet, feel free to take this time to add in a question for us. But while we wait, we have one more poll we'd like to do. So the question here is, how many committees do you have at your institution? Are you just with the single one? Do you have 2 to 5? Or are you a major institution with more than 5? All right, let's see what the results are. Okay, so it looks like most people have 2 to 5, and that of those that are not in the 2 to 5 range, more people have more than 5 than less at their institutions. So, okay, let's jump forward into the question and answer time. As I said, you can always continue to add in questions as we go, and if you want, we can always get back to you if you don't have a question, if it's more institution specific for what you're doing. So let's see, the first question that I have here is, can the protocol minutes be edited after the meeting and printed for review before they are finalized?
Thanks for the questions, everyone. This is Jen again. Yes, they can be. Actually, that's something I could show briefly. So one of the things that is available, I think I have a couple of minutes, within the meeting functionality, so I'm going to go ahead just so I can show how some of this works, is after you begin the meeting, that's where you can go ahead and take attendance for individuals. I could say who's present, who's absent. I'm going to go through this super quick. I could do a vote, so I could say everybody said yes, approve. Did that a little backwards. And then I can go through that and I can take notes during the meeting. So for example, everyone liked this person. So, you know, you're typically taking minutes during the meeting, but you may not take all of your minutes. So I could end the meeting, and then I can also come back and make additional edits. So this is where, you know, if I'm not taking, I took some notes out of the system, I can go ahead and say, you know, additional notes. And I can do that until I get to the point where I'm ready to finalize the minutes. I can also view the summary and look at that before I go ahead and finalize them. So I think that helps with that.
Thanks, Jen. And related to that, is there a way that if somebody needs to recuse themselves, that can be tracked also?
So yeah, when I go through the voting process, there are also options for, yeah, recusal. I think I went through that kind of quickly, but yes, that is a possibility. Yeah.
Okay, great. And then I guess we mostly have questions about the meeting. So is there a way to track reviewer activity across all protocols for a certain committee? And I have an example here from the person asking the question. For example, Dr. Smith has reviewed 50 protocols, but Dr. Jones has reviewed a different amount, and how do you track those separately?
Okay, that's a great question. Currently, the system does not do that, but we are working on enhancements to being able to track reviewer data and also within reporting. So one of the features that we will have planned for next year is the ability to track additional information about your reviewers, including expertise, but also to also look at protocol workload and how many protocols they have reviewed for a particular time period. One of the requests that we've had from our user community is to be able to look at that information when they're assigning protocols out, also in addition to looking, at their overall process, from month to month or year to year. So we don't have that capability yet, but that is planned for next year.
Great, thank you. And then another one is more of a question about what you've heard anecdotally. And so have you had any sense from our schools that are, or institutions that are using protocols, if it has helped reduce the academic burden?
So far we have a few schools that are in the process of implementing right now. We don't have a number of schools that have been working with protocols in a way that we really have data to share there. But we have done a lot of work in terms of identifying the pain points, so to speak, around the process and finding ways to improve on that. So hopefully as we have protocols out there and we have a few months of, or a year of moving forward and being able to track that data, we'll be able to share that. But based on user testing and some of the piloting we've done so far, we've gotten some positive feedback on that.
Great, thanks. And everyone else, if you just want to take another minute to get any questions in that you have for Jen. The last one that I have here is wondering if there is a way to see all of the data related to your entire protocols in the system, if there's a way to export that out at all?
So again, not yet. So one of the things that we are planning within protocols next year is a reporting function, and that will be one of our initial features with respect to that will be the ability to have something similar to this screen here within Manage Protocols, where you'll have a lot more data that you'll be able to choose from, but a lot of the features will be similar in that you'll be able to create and save filters. You'll also be able to save the columns that you want to see for a particular filter or report. And then with that, we'll have the ability to export to a spreadsheet format. So that will be available next year.
Perfect. And so next year is almost here, but
I know.
was a little bit dizzy thinking about how much you've gotten done in the past year. All right, well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions that would be for the broader audience. So I just wanted to thank both you, Jen, for presenting on this and everyone for attending and asking your questions.
Okay, great. And the one thing that I want to mention before we wrap up, we are planning another compliance-related webinar, and that is next year. We haven't nailed down the exact date, but in February we're planning to present on conflicts of interest and commitment. So we are in the process now of making some changes within our COI product to enable it to have more flexibility so schools can track conflict of commitment, outside professional activities, and beyond what we usually think of as the research types of COI activities. So that's something to look forward to to February, and we'll be sending out information about that in the new year. Thanks for joining us again, and I hope to see you next year and have a great holiday.